Beyond the Gate spoilers tease that everything Nicole thought she had buried is clawing back to the surface, uglier than before, refusing to stay quiet, and refusing to let her sleep. The dream always begins the same way, her hands on a cake knife, the silver blade catching the chandelier light at her anniversary party, the room full of laughter that sounds like water circling a drain. She cuts into the white frosting, only to find black icing oozing out of the seams, and when she looks up Ted isn't at her side. Leslie is, pressing a champagne flute into the free hand. Nicole can't move, whispering a name she doesn't recognize yet knows will ruin everything. Eva. The cake crumbles, a toppled cathedral of sponge and bile, and everyone claps as if this is a show, as if betrayal comes with its own soundtrack. She wakes gasping, the echo of the crowd still simmering in her chest, and sits there in the dark listing the facts she can't argue with. Leslie blew up her marriage, Ted didn't stop it, and now, with Chelsea missing, the family's nerves are frayed to wire and spark, too fragile to handle the new fire Leslie is setting. Before the sun is up, Nicole makes coffee she doesn't drink and stares at her phone for news of Chelsea that does not arrive. She goes over the last solid sighting school 2 days ago. Backpack in the hall, camera at 3:07 p.m. and then not home. Scattered texts to friends, a post about a film club meeting that turned out to be a misread date, and then her phone goes dark. Danny's calls during that first night sounded like someone underwater, word fragments, bubbles of fear, gulped air between sobs. Now everything has sorted into an incomplete timeline and a complete panic. Nicole knows it's not fair to connect Leslie's latest stunt to Chelsea's disappearance, but her mind keeps tracing the lines anyway, a conspiracy map pinned by resentment. Leslie never appeared unless she could benefit from ruin. Last time it was a public ambush at a party, now it's an even bolder intrusion. Leslie at Nicole's door, grinning as if she's won a raffle for someone else's life. That morning, when the knock comes, it isn't timid. It's a knock that presumes entry, the kind that treats a house as a stage and the threshold as a mark hit by an impatient actor. Nicole opens the door to Leslie's smile, the glossy kind that looks pasted on, and beneath it the feral brightness of someone who reads chaos as a personal green light. Leslie doesn't ask to come in. She crosses the threshold like it's her living room. Trail of perfume and entitlement, a manila folder tucked under her arm like a clutch purse. You should start packing, she announces, voice pitched to Carrie, as if she's reporting a weather update, as if the storm belongs to Nicole and not to the woman walking it into the house. Ted and I will be moving in. For a moment, Nicole thinks she's misheard. Words bend under shock. The living room tilts like a ship desk. Excuse me? She finally manages, and the restraint it takes not to seize the folder and shred it is almost dizzying. She watches Leslie unspool a prepared speech about transition, stability for Eva, and formalities that are better handled sooner than later. The folder flips open, unspooling documents that look legitimate precisely because Leslie has always been expert at theater, letterhead, notarized seals, something that appears to reference occupancy and property transfer, and there, anchoring the audacity, Ted's signature. Leslie taps the signature as if pointing to the sun. He's ready to do the right thing. You should be, too. There's no reason to drag this out, she adds, voice honeyed and razor-edged. There are a dozen responses Nicole's anger is auditioning for, and all of them could burn the room down. But something steadier rises instead, old training in a life that once ran on dignity and schedules. Ask for reasons, build a record. Don't hand your opponent a scene she can use. You're making an announcement in my home about my home, she says, every word measured. And you're doing it while my niece is missing. Did Ted send you? Leslie opens her mouth, and Nicole tastes the answer before it arrives. We're a team now. It's the unctuous use of we, the weaponized togetherness, that makes Nicole's chest tighten. She reminds herself to breathe. Leave the papers, she says. I'll read them, and you will leave. Leslie's smile shifts, a minor chord revealed under the major. Don't take too long, she says as she glides back to the door. You're going to want a head start. When the door shuts, sound ricochets through the house like a trapped bird. Nicole picks up the folder, Weighs it the way you weigh an object you wish were lighter. A corner of her brain runs practical. Call Bill, have him read it, audit every signature and seal, find the trick under the trick. But the rest of her feels soaked by the humiliation that Ted's pen has authored. He didn't walk through the door with Leslie, but he might as well have. Rage mixes with old love in a cocktail that tastes like poison you keep just to prove you could resist it. She sets the folder on the table as if it might bite and texts Ted, "We need to talk today." Ted replies within minutes. The bubbles show up like a heartbeat with palpitations. "Of course," he writes. "I was hoping for that." She chooses a public place because the memory of Leslie in the living room is too raw to risk a second invasion. The cafe is half full, all cappuccino foam and nervous chatter. Ted stands when she arrives, which is not a victory so much as a confirmation that he still plays the role he thinks she wants. He looks tired. He looks like the kind of tired people pay to fix in a spa. He looks, impossibly, like the man she once promised to stand beside when both of them were too naive to imagine standing in a burning house. There's no preface. Nicole sits and goes straight to the point. "Leslie came to my house this morning. She brought papers. She said you're moving in." Ted opens his hands, palms up, a peace offering that has never worked on Nicole, and she sees the reflex and hates it. "I asked her to deliver some documents," he says, apology already written on his face. "Not like that," he adds quickly, the old instinct to manage optics kicking in. "I didn't want it to be an ambush." He says the word as if it hurts. Nicole thinks of the anniversary party and wonders if he hears himself. "She behaved like it was hers to decide," Nicole says. "She said you signed to start transfer. She told me to pack." Ted exhales like a man confessing to gravity. "I'm trying to juggle a lot," he says. "I'm trying not to make anything worse, and I probably am. I still care about you, Nicole." "That's true regardless of everything else. But I can't let Eva pay for what Leslie and I did. She's a kid. She didn't choose any of this." He says Eva's name almost reverently, as if the syllables can wash him clean. It's not a card he should play, but it's one he has. Nicole can't argue with the logic that children don't ask for trouble they inherit. But she can argue with the method. She can always argue with the method. "The house?" she asks, steady. "Giving her my house is your solution?" "It's not." He starts and stops, recalibrating. "The house is the only thing I can put in a trust quickly that means long-term security for Eva. It isn't a punishment for you. It's the one asset I can leverage without exposing her to more public conflict. A house is safety. She deserves safety." His eyes search her for permission to continue, and she holds his gaze without giving him cover. "What about my safety?" she asks. "What about not sending your affair into my living room with a smug smile and a packet of printed knives?" He flinches. "I told her to keep it simple," he says, which makes Nicole laugh once, the sound shocked out of her. "There's no simple version of betrayal," she says. "There's just the one where you name it or pretend not to." They sit in the heat of that and then in the colder breeze of what must be done. "So," Nicole says, "let's favor clarity. You will finalize our divorce. I won't agree to another delay. You will speak to Leslie and tell her there are lines, and you will not step into my house without warning or reason. Understood?" Ted nods, and for once it isn't performative. There's a resignation in it that looks close to relief. "I'll sign whatever I need to sign," he says, as soon as Bill resolves the immediate situation with Chelsea. He is coordinating with the police, consulting with the DA, getting ahead of press if this gets bigger. He says we're days away from either a break or a stalemate, and I want to avoid making moves that could distract Danny or complicate the legal landscape. He leans forward. "Please go to Danny today. She's falling apart in a way she won't show you unless you stand in front of her. You're the only person she'll let into that room without a fight." Nicole absorbs it. The strange way her husband's sense of triage still intersects with a concern for her family. "It would be easier if he were all villain. Complexity gives you fewer handholds." "I'm going to Danny regardless of what you advise," she says. "And I'll talk to Bill. I'm done hearing about strategies secondhand." Ted's lips press into a thin line. "He's expecting your call," he says. "He told me you'd be more direct than I am." The coffee arrives. Something foamy she doesn't remember ordering, and she stares at it like it contains a message. "One more thing," She says, "If you plan to move in with Leslie anywhere near me before our divorce is final, I will contest the public narrative as hard as I can. I won't be painted as the bitter ex who wouldn't let a child live in a house. If you're giving Eva security, do it in a way that doesn't erase me. There's more than one deed in this town." They part with nothing resolved and everything set on a track that feels unstoppable. Outside, the light is too bright for the subject matter. Nicole calls Bill while walking, refusing the car like penance so the city can rub against her. Bill picks up on the second ring, his voice the gravelly bass of a man who did his paperwork and his hard time. Ex-cop, unofficial family fixer, the guy you look at when things go sideways and you can't tell if you should duck or run. She doesn't bother with pleasantries. She lays out the morning in clean lines: Leslie's intrusion, the documents, Ted's plan, the divorce conditions. He listens and grunts at the right moments, the soundtrack of a man mapping angles. Then she shifts to Chelsea. "Tell me where we are," she says. Bill walks her through the case, his sentences clipped to reduce oxygen to alarm. Phone pings. Last known messages. The boy at the bus stop who thinks he saw Chelsea but isn't positive because he was late and his mind was on algebra. Danny's timeline that repeats like a looped video because grief does that. It turns time into a hallway with only two doors, before and after. The only new thing: surveillance footage from a camera at the edge of the old botanical park. A figure in Chelsea's jacket at dusk, the movement quick, the kind that reads as fear if you're already scared. The face is wrong for a confident ID, pixels breaking at the edges like bad weather. "We're pushing for enhancement," Bill says. "But you know how that goes. TV makes it look like a magic trick. Real life makes you squint at ghosts." Nicole's stomach tightens. "Does Danny know about the footage?" Bill pauses. "Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. I didn't want her spiraling over a maybe." She cuts across a narrow street, car horns blistering behind her. "What about rumors?" she asks. "What's the internet saying?" Bill laughs without humor. "Everything and nothing. It's a half-life of terrible ideas. I've got people reporting posts that cross lines. But you should stay off it." She says she will and knows she won't. "And Leslie?" she asks. "Where does she fit into this picture of yours?" Bill makes a small sound low in his throat, a signal he's weighing words. "She fits wherever you let her fit," he says. "Legally, she's noise. Psychologically, she's the kind of noise that scrambles signals if you put your radio next to it." "Keep distance. Let me look at those documents. I'll tell you how much of it is theater and how much is a threat." Nicole texts him photos of the papers with the quick, competent hands of someone sending a flare. Bill replies with a single sentence that manages to be both calm and promising: "On it." She pockets her phone and heads to Danny's. The route too familiar. Danny lives in a half-renovated bungalow that always looks like hope and exhaustion had a baby. Today, the porch light is on even though it's noon, and the screen door is latched like a mouth refusing to say what it knows. Nicole knocks softly, then louder. The latch scrapes and the door opens to Danny's face, all pale edges and sleepless circles, hair scraped back in a style that says the only thing she could control today was the direction of her bangs. They don't hug right away. Sometimes hugging breaks the seal and floods the room with a version of love that wipes out the small tasks keeping someone upright. They step into the kitchen and talk about nothing for a minute. The beeping smoke detector Danny can't find, the plant that seems dead but kept one leaf, the coffee pot that drips like it's trying to say something. Then Danny exhales and folds, the admission of gravity stronger than posture. Nicole catches her, and they stand like that until Danny straightens because she has to. "Any news?" Danny whispers, as if a louder voice could scare away possibility. Nicole tells her about Bill's confidence but not the footage, choosing mercy in the form of tempo. "We will talk to him together this afternoon," she says. "He'll walk us through what's next." Danny nods, then stares at the wall as if it might confess something. "I keep thinking about the last text she sent me," she says. "I'll be late. Don't freak." "I didn't freak." "Not then." "I should have freaked." What kind of mother ignores that? Nicole steps in quickly, clean and blunt. The kind who trusts a routine that hadn't failed until it did. The kind who deserves help, not judgment. Danny laughs, a sound full of edges. "You should bottle that and sell it to people who sleep." she says, and the small joke slides off both of them, brief relief already evaporating. "What about Ted?" Danny asks, eyes narrowing. "He texted me a hero offer at 3 in the morning that I didn't answer. Something about paying for press control. He is so generous when he's guilty." Nicole decides honesty is owed. "He wants to put the house in a trust for Eva," she says, watching Danny's face for anger. What arrives is a familiar sardonic tilt. "Of course he does. The man treats consequences like gifts." "And what do you want to do?" Nicole doesn't have a perfect answer, and she doesn't pretend she does. "I want to keep you standing, and I want to find Chelsea, and I want to burn Leslie's file cabinet." Priorities fluctuate by the hour. Danny considers, then sighs. "I won't let your life become a charity project for his guilt. Do what's right for you and for Eva. Those aren't mutually exclusive if you don't let them be." The way Danny says it, without venom, makes Nicole's throat tighten. In crisis, sibling advice comes clean. "Also," Danny adds, "if Leslie steps on my porch, I'll have her arrested for trespassing. She should test me if she's curious." They spend the next hour piecing together the fragments of Chelsea's last week. Danny pulls out a shoebox of small things: a worn movie stub, a broken bracelet, a photo strip taken with a friend Nicole vaguely recognizes. None of it feels like a map until you let yourself imagine each object as a waypoint on a path a teenager draws without understanding how fragile the route is. Chelsea had developed a recent fascination with old places, abandoned architecture, buildings with history still audible if you press your ear to the wall. The botanical park fits that habit, and it makes the footage both more plausible and more dangerous. "She wanted to photograph the rust," Danny says, tone apologetic as if this were an indulgence. Nicole sees it instead as a detail that could save them time. "Bill mentioned the park," she says carefully. "We should swing by after talking to him. Not to trample on the police, just to see with our own eyes what the place feels like." Bill's office is a study in controlled mess. Stacks that look random but file themselves if you glance twice, a coat tree with too many coats for one man, a coffee machine that seems both threatening and devoted. He gives them chairs and gives Nicole a look that says he knows she didn't tell Danny everything and trusts the reason. Then he lays out the facts and slides over printed stills from the footage. Danny stiffens but doesn't break. She leans forward and stares at the grainy image. Your brain doing the thing it does when it wants to see someone it loves, a trick of perception where pixels bend toward confirmation. "That's her jacket," Danny says, voice tight. "She stitched a patch under the left sleeve." "Can you zoom?" Bill does, the patch becoming a rumor at the edge of clarity. "There's more," he says, tapping the screen. "At the far right, the gate." Nicole follows his finger and sees a piece of metalwork partly obscured by overgrowth. An old ornamental arch with letters missing. It looks like a mouth that tried to say something and quit halfway. Bill rubs a hand over his jaw. "That gate isn't on the park's main maps. It was a service entrance when the grounds were still maintained. Now it's just a boundary with pretensions." "But here's the thing, someone oiling the hinges would leave marks. And someone going through there at dusk might not want to be seen at the front." Danny inhales sharply, and Nicole puts a hand on her arm. "We can look," Nicole says. "Not to interfere, just to know what we're asking the police to focus on." Before they leave, Bill circles back to the folder from Leslie. "Preliminary read," he says. "It's leverage dressed up as generosity. There's no binding transfer without your consent or a court order, and neither exists. But pay attention to the trust language. It's designed to look unassailable because it invokes a child. It's not ironclad, it's just designed to make you feel cruel if you resist. We can negotiate around it, slow walk it, or reframe it to protect you and not feed Leslie's theatrics." The relief that hits Nicole is both practical and emotional, an exhale she didn't realize she'd been holding since the door knocked that morning. "Thank you," she says. "I needed a fact to hold." At the park, late afternoon leans toward early evening in a light that makes everything sharper. The botanical grounds keep their ghosts close, cracked fountains choked with ivy, plaques with names no one reads, a conservatory skeleton where glass once held climates still lingering as stories. Bill leads them along the perimeter to the place where the fence folds into an older structure. The gate is there, a rusted filigree suggestion of former elegance, and the ground around it shows signs of recent footsteps. Not enough to confirm. Enough to fuel focus. Bill kneels, looks the way he learned on night shifts decades ago, and makes a small satisfied sound. Oil, he says, touching a hinge. Not told someone cared about this opening. Danny tenses, eyes scanning like a hummingbird's. If she came through here, why? Bill answers without looking up. Because this side opens into a maintenance path that runs behind the lower greenhouses. If you wanted to avoid the front cameras, this would be your route. He straightens, and his knees crack in a way that makes him grin like a man remembering he's still alive. Let's not play detective beyond this line, he says, gesturing at a cracked stone. I'll call it in. The last thing we need is for you two to trample on something that matters. He steps away to make the call. Danny leans into Nicole, voice breaking. If she was here, she was scared or she was meeting someone. Either version makes me feel like I missed a script. Nicole anchors her voice. Or she was being brave, she says. Kids walk into abandoned places because they want to feel the world push back. It doesn't mean she walked in alone or walked in foolish. It means she has your stubborn streak and my curiosity. She means it, and it does what she hopes. It pulls Danny's shoulders down from her ears and grounds her back into the moment. The police arrive with professionalism and polite boundaries, a detective with a pen behind his ear doing the cautious dance of speaking to family without making promises timing won't let him keep. He agrees the footage matters, agrees the gate is interesting, agrees to send a team back with better light and better tools. The subtext is clear. Keep breathing while we do our jobs. As the sky edges toward the color that always reminds Nicole of bruised fruit, her phone buzzes with a message she doesn't recognize. The number is blocked. The text is short: stop digging where the roots are shallow. It's the kind of threat that pretends to be a proverb, and it lands in her gut like a coin dropped down a well. She shows Bill. He reads it twice, then 3 times. Staying outwardly calm while his eyes go flat in the way they do when he puts himself between a client and a shadow. We log it, he says. We don't answer it. We let the detective see it. We don't let it make us jump at our own reflections. Danny sees the text and makes a soft sound that is half fury, half exhaustion. They think we'll scare easily, she says. They must not know our family. Back home, night wraps the house and extends it into a theater where every window is an eye. Nicole leaves one lamp on in each room like a ritual, a secular prayer to banish silence. She stands where Leslie stood that morning and grips the back of the chair as if it were a railing on a high balcony. Her mind runs reels: the cafe talk, Bill's assessment, the gate, the text. None of it settles into certainty. The only sharp thing is the truth of Ted's face when he said he still cared, and the even sharper truth of how little that matters stacked against what he signed. She pours a glass of water and drinks it as if it might dissolve the residue of a day that felt like someone else's script. Sleep doesn't come easy. When it finally does, it's shallow, stingy, and filled with fragments: Eva's name written on a chalkboard she can't reach, Leslie's lipstick smearing onto the margins of legal papers, Danny in the greenhouse skeleton whispering to a patch of ground that won't answer. She wakes at 3:09 a.m., heart pounding in the old syncopation, and goes to the kitchen where her phone sits like a talisman. There are no new messages about Chelsea, but there is an email from Ted with a subject line that reads, "I owe you more context." Against her better judgment, the email is long and reads like a confession drafted by a man trying to be both honest and strategic. He explains the trust idea in calmer language, frames it as a way to keep Eva out of the line of fire, details the legal advice he took that clearly came from someone who sees families as balance sheets. He apologizes again. At the end he says, "I will tell Leslie to stand down. I should have done that at the start. I was a coward about confrontation." That ends now. She wants to believe the last sentence. She knows better than to take it as a fact without proof. Morning arrives brittle and gray. Danny texts at 6, "Can you come with me to the station?" Nicole is already dressed when she answers yes. On the way, her phone rings and Bill's name fills the screen. "Quick update," he says. The lab punched the footage until it gave up something. 2 frames show another silhouette behind Chelsea. Taller, hooded, no face. Could be a trick of light, could be crucial. The gate shows recent disturbance within 24 to 48 hours. Police are taking it seriously. And your text? Detective logged it, and cyber's on it. No promises, but it puts pressure in the right places. She thanks him, and he adds, one more thing. Leslie's papers contain a clause about necessary relocation due to domestic disharmony. It's clever garbage. It assumes you'll scare at words. Don't. At the station, they wait in a room designed for waiting to be bearable but never pleasant. The detective from the park enters with a stack of printouts and a tone that balances empathy and procedure. He shows Danny and Nicole the enhanced frames. He outlines next steps: canvassing, calls to teachers, searches expanding in a methodical radius, the digital footprint sweep that always feels invasive but is necessary. He asks Danny to think again of new names, new curiosities, any hint of obsession from the last few weeks. Danny mentions a photography forum, a man who commented on Chelsea's photos about chasing real shadows, a comment she dismissed as artsy nonsense at the time. The detective writes it down and nods. We'll pull it, he says. Thank you. They step outside into a light that hasn't decided to be kind. The air smells like rain. Rehearsing. Nicole's phone buzzes again. Another blocked text. The gates stay closed for a reason. Don't pry. This time she doesn't show Danny immediately. She forwards it to Bill with the word now. He calls within a minute. They're trying to establish control, he says. They're also telling us where to look without wanting to. Gates, plural. Where else are there gates? Nicole thinks of the arch at the park, then of older, less literal gates, the gilded entrance to the Wexler estate on the ridge, the ironwork at the service road near the old freight yard, the rusted barrier at the canal bridge people keep cutting and the city keeps replacing. We need a map, she says, and Bill chuckles. Already pulled, he says. I'm sending you a list of gate sites that fit the language and the geography of the footage. We'll feed it to the detective officially. Unofficially, I want your eyes on one spot I can't get out of my head. He names the freight yard. Why? She asks. Because it has both a gate and a gatekeeper, a night watch who runs on cash and curiosity. Those types see everything. As they drive toward the yard, Danny keeps flipping through photos of Chelsea, as if one will suddenly provide an impossible breadcrumb. Nicole glances at her and chooses her words carefully. I didn't show you earlier, she says, passing over her phone with the new text. I didn't want to load you with more fear, but you deserve to see what I see. Danny reads it, jaw tensing, then nods and hands it back. They think threats will make us cower, she says. They think we are old versions of ourselves. Nicole smiles with no humor. We are older and meaner, she says. We are exactly the wrong audience for veiled advice. The freight yard looks like a place time lost interest in. Rows of boxcars stripped of their livery, a skeleton crew that seems to include the moon, and that gate, chain link reinforced by an older iron frame, padlock that looks ceremonial given how often the fence has been cut and mended. The watchman's booth houses a man with eyes like mottled glass and a deep respect for cigarettes. Bill meets them there, his presence both grounding and a flare. He holds up his hands to show he is unarmed with anything but questions, and the watchman shrugs like curiosity is currency he accepts. They trade pleasantries that sound like two men pretending they haven't met 3 times already on 3 different cases. Then Bill steers the conversation to last night. The man squints, memory scanning, then points with his chin toward the south end. Heard hinges, he says. The old gate. People think it's quieter. It squeals unless you oil it. Someone oiled it. Didn't look like city paint. Looked like care. Nicole and Danny exchange a look. There it is again, the oil. A through line of maintenance in abandoned spaces, a sign of intent where neglect is the standard. They walk the south end with the watchman's permission and Bill's boundary talk repeating in Nicole's head. They don't cross any tapes. They don't touch what isn't theirs. But they look. And that matters. There's a scrap of fabric snagged on a thorn near the inner fence, gray enough to be from any jacket, frayed enough to be a non-clue. Nicole photographs it anyway. There's a set of footprints in the dirt with a twist to the left shoe that reads like a limp or a bad soul. Bill kneels again, doing his quiet ritual, and stands with a face that says he has a working theory he won't yet say out loud. On the drive back, Danny finally asks the question Nicole knew was waiting. Do you think Leslie is tied to this? It lands with the weight of a fear sharpened by coincidence. Nicole doesn't answer immediately. She thinks of the texts and the gates and the way Leslie weaponizes timing. She thinks of what Bill said about noise. I think Leslie is tied to herself, Nicole says at last. She's capable of using anything as leverage. That doesn't make her the architect of everything that hurts, but it does make her dangerous in a week like this. Danny nods, accepting the line between suspicion and paranoia as a live wire they can't afford to grab with both hands. When this is over, Danny says, "We're going to reset the word family." It's been mingled. Back home again, Nicole finds another email from Ted. It's short this time. I spoke to Leslie. She will not contact you again. She will not approach the house. I'm pulling the documents back for review. I'm with Bill on the trust language. We can redo it. Also, I told her that any hint of interference with Chelsea's case is a line I will not see crossed. It reads like a promise and a provocation in one. Nicole replies with a single sentence that contains both her gratitude and her demand. Keep your word. She does not add the tale that throbs in her chest. For once. Evening brings another ritualized check-in with Danny, then a call from the detective who uses the word promising in relation to a digital lead. The photography forum posted timestamps that suggested DM exchange moved off platform around the time Chelsea last posted. The handle on the other end is new but tied to an email domain the detective recognizes from an earlier investigation into a ring of trespass enthusiasts who treat Urban Decay like a secret club. The ring is not violent, but the detours they inspire can be. It's a shape. It isn't yet a person. Nicole thanks him for the not quite news and hangs up with a sense that the story is tightening around the edges. It's what Bill predicted, days away from a break or a wall. She prays for the break and braces for the wall. When she steps into the quiet of the living room, the space feels different, as if the morning's invasion left residue the evening light reveals. She picks up the folder Leslie left and flips through it again, this time with Bill's voice annotating her conscience. The words are still sharp, but they no longer cut as cleanly now that she knows where they rely on shame rather than law. She sees the clause about domestic disharmony and almost laughs. The phrase reads like a line written by someone who believes a household is a story you can edit by decree. She thinks of all the real work a house requires: leaks patched at midnight, recipes adjusted until a child stops crying, the slow miracle of remembering forgiveness long enough to practice it. Homes are not won by paperwork. The final page flips and a thinner sheet slides out, almost an afterthought. It's a photocopy of a deed from decades ago, the name of a previous owner Nicole half remembers as a rumor in the neighborhood, someone who built then fled, a man who treated the house as a commodity rather than a shelter. In the margin, in Leslie's hand, is a note: "Some houses like news stories better." It's petty and it's chilling. It confirms what Nicole already knows: Leslie isn't just trying to move in, she's trying to overwrite. Nicole places the note back in the folder and sets it aside. She's not leaving. Not under threat, not under false generosity, not under the performance of concern for a child who deserves care without collateral. She stands by the window and thinks about gates. The literal ones, rusted and oiled, the lines between public and private, habitat and hazard. The metaphorical ones, the thresholds you cross without noticing until there's no path back except through. Some gates open with keys, some demand you choose who you are on one side or the other. Leslie thinks a gate is something you storm. Ted thinks it's something you hold for someone else and hope they walk through smiling. Bill knows a gate is a question: who does it keep out, and who does it keep in? Nicole starts to see hers clearly. She will draw her boundary not as a wall but as a door with rules. She will fight for Chelsea with the stubborn love Danny needs and the clear head Bill trusts. She will require Ted to be the man his last email implies. And she will give Eva what is truly owed: a childhood not weaponized for adult warfare. The next morning, her alarm is the buzz of a call she can't ignore. Bill again. "Get dressed," he says. "They found something at the park by the service path." "Not a body," he says quickly when he hears her breath spike. "A backpack." "It's Chelsea's. There's a journal inside. And something else you're going to want to see with your own eyes." He doesn't elaborate, And she doesn't push because she knows the difference between a breadcrumb and a bomb. She texts Danny and is out the door in 7 minutes. No makeup, hair in the kind of knot you make while moving. On the drive, she rehearses not what she'll say but how she'll breathe. You can break in silence if you don't pace your air. At the park, the scene is contained and respectful. Yellow tape whispering in the breeze. The detective meets them at the edge and gives Danny a look that is both warning and kindness. "We have your permission to open the journal," he says to Danny. "We will handle it with care. We will share what we learn." Danny nods. "Just tell me if she wrote to me," she says, not knowing what she means until the words leave. The detective's face shifts, a shadow passing. "There's a page I think you should see," he says, and he leads them to a table where evidence bags sit like ghosts. Inside one is the notebook, spiral-bound, stickers peeling. Inside another is a small object that looks unremarkable until the light hits it, a brass key with teeth filed by hand, a crude tag attached with string, and on the tag, in Chelsea's cramped print, a single word that makes all of them go still: gatekeeper.